Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of My Veterinary Life Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Marcy Kirk. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm joined by our other co-host, Dr. Annie Chavant.
Hello, everyone. My pronouns are also she, her, hers.
Today, we have a very special guest. Dr. Karisa Tang is the Vice President of Animal Health at Shedd Aquarium, and we have a lot to cover. So before we jump in, we do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you with support from our educational partner, IDEX, whose diagnostic and software solutions create clarity in the complex, constantly evolving world of veterinary medicine, and you can learn more at idex.com. So with that, welcome to the show, Dr. Tang.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We are really, really excited to have you. We want to do a shout out to Dr. Sarah Wright, who co-hosts the Veterinary Vertex podcast, and she connected us. And so I'm just thrilled. I don't think we've had anyone on from an aquarium before. And so we're gonna talk about that. But first, we have to start at the very beginning. So can you tell us how you first became interested in veterinary medicine?
Sure. So for me, my first interest was the ocean and ocean conservation. So I was lucky enough to grow up in Northern California, going to the Monterey Bay Aquarium all the time. And when I was about 7 years old, Free Willy also came out. And so then I became, very into whales and wanting to save the whales. And so ocean conservation overall is what brought me to this. And then veterinary medicine was like the way that I wanted to come about that career. So veterinary medicine came second to the ocean for me.
I like that. Yeah, it's interesting how those kind of priorities fall into place. Man, you really brought me back with that Free Willy reference. I can hear that song playing in the background right now and see him leaping over the barrier. It was an inspiring one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Problematic in some ways, but definitely inspired this little girl.
It worked out. So then what did the road to Shedd Aquarium look like for you? Was that kind of the path all through vet school? What were the steps afterwards? We talk on the podcast about that kind of zoo med exotics path and how it can be really competitive and really challenging. And so what did that look like to get to the aquarium specifically?
It's long. So yes, I think throughout undergrad, I was looking for opportunities in wildlife rehabilitation. I found a position also in volunteering for wildlife rehab that was in marine mammals, also in Southern California, while I had another job during college, and then went to vet school. And then, the rest starts. So doing a lot of work extracurricularly and in the summers as well, doing research projects, getting experience in a bunch of different institutions, doing my clinical year externships at places like SeaWorld and Seattle Aquarium and the Navy Marine Mammal Program. And then after school, I did the whole thing, did more of the traditional route. There are many ways to get there. But I did a small animal rotating internship my first year in a private practice in San Diego, and then a second specialty internship in aquatic veterinary medicine at Vancouver Aquarium, which is how I know Dr. Wright, and then a 3-year residency programs in zoological medicine with the University of Illinois, Brookfield Zoo, and Shedd Aquarium. That also has a concurrent master's program on which I worked with a virus and sea lions, and then went to Minnesota Zoo for about a year and came back to Shedd Aquarium, which is where I've been for the past 3.5 years.
I thank you so much for sharing that, because like you said, there are a lot of different paths. Mm-hmm. And so I think knowing that there are options is also really encouraging. So, you could be out a couple years and decide that you want to go back and pursue something like this and get those experiences. And I love hearing that. I also got really excited that Chicago made an impression on you, like you were able to come back to it. So I don't know what this world looks like. Like, what is your day to day? I know no day is like the same, but what are your role responsibilities? Like, what's your workflow like?
Yeah, so I'll go for day to day as an aquatic veterinarian first, and then go into a little bit my role, which has changed a bit in the past year. But in general, we all know no day in veterinary medicine is the same, but in the morning, we all have rounds together and we talk about the day, the previous day, and the cases coming up later that week. And then a lot of our morning is clinics. So seeing wellness exams, seeing rechecks, there's urgent care throughout the day. So we're on call 24/7. Somebody on our team is, because no matter where we are in the world, like this group of animals is our responsibility. And then the afternoon is a lot filled with meetings. So I think what a lot of people might not know is that there's a ton of paperwork, as is true with all of veterinary medicine, but also research and a lot of communication, because they may think like you don't have clients in a zoo medicine job, but that's not true. You just happen to have clients who are animal care professionals as well as the institutions themselves. So it's a lot of conversations with all of the groups managing the animals themselves, and between each other, and talking to colleagues across the country or the world, and teaching. We do a lot of teaching. We have a teaching hospital, so we have vet students, vet tech students, the zoological medicine residents. So that also takes up a bit of time. So I would say it's probably like 40 to 60% clinics, and the other part is all the other things. My role is now a little bit more administrative. So my responsibility first is always towards the animals, but then I'm also managing this wonderful group of people that cares for the animal health department. So that's the veterinarians, the veterinary technicians, and 2 kind of hospital manager people as well, who are wonderful. And then also that horizontal responsibility. So working with the other members of the leadership team from conservation research and design and exhibits and even finance and all of that, all of us working together to forward the mission and make this place a really great place to work for people as well.
Thanks for giving us a little bit of that background kind of detail of what goes on and what different roles veterinarians can play in terms of the day-to-day operations of an aquarium. I'm curious about your new role, and the skills that I'm hearing you describe are not necessarily courses that I remember taking in vet school. I don't know about you. So how did you prepare for that? Or is it a learn on the job situation, or how are you adjusting?
It's an adjustment. I did not learn about it beforehand. I have considered it in my mind as another residency, because it's just fire hose of all these things that I spent 13 years not learning to do. So things like budgeting and like which refrigerator should we get for the new hospital. So also what happened is that we built a new hospital and an offsite facility with a hospital at the exact time that I was coming on board. So I lived my days in like construction hats as well, trying to put these things together, and had no idea in the beginning what I was doing. But actually, I talked to one of my mentors when I was talking about whether to accept this or not. And she had some very wise words. She's like, look, if you can deal with an incredibly sick cetacean and deal with, public relations in addition to 40 different people, in addition to a really specialized, really large animal, like you can figure this out. You can work it out. So it's been slow. And I'm just extremely fortunate because the leadership here at Shedd, it's very progressive, and they have been mentoring me through this. And without that, I would not be okay. But it is a huge learning experience. And I think the part that I really want to share about this is that people always think, what's the next step? Like when you were in high school, oh, how do I get to college? How do I get to vet school? How do I get to internships? How do I get to residency? How do I pass boards? And then what's my next thing? And like, what do you actually want to do with your life? What do you want to spend your days doing? And people say, oh, I want to get promoted, or I want to be a manager. Like, do you? Because do you want to care for these people? Is that actually really one of your main motivations? Caring for humans and caring for the institution. And so to be really thoughtful about what your goals are and moving forward in your career, because success and the next step can mean very different things to very different people. Like, do you want your circle of influence to be, I want to be really involved in my professional, memberships and do a lot for residency programs across the country? Do I want to do this for my institution? So just to be really careful about what your goals are.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it's something that I think we struggle with. I'm just going to say veterinarians because that's what we have experience with. It's like you said, we had these goals: get to vet school. Mm-hmm. Some people, get an internship, get a residency, get a job. And then it's kind of like, then what? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so taking that time though to reflect, because it's okay. I love taking a look back, and this is not where I thought I was going to be. It sounds like not necessarily where you thought you were going to be, but taking those chances and reflecting on the skills that we have as veterinarians that really can, Annie, that was such a beautiful question too, that you asked, that these skills that we learn or that we apply, that we've learned in a different way. I mean, I think about how we untangle cases and try to do the best for a patient. That's similar to like, we've got all these deadlines and things we need for the new hospital and these decisions that need to be made, and we can do that, using those skills in a different way. So I just really appreciate that. And then emphasizing that we have to think about these goals because we're a whole person, and we bring our whole person to work and outside of work. And so your goals can shift, and that's okay. So I just really want to emphasize that. You did your internship, you did a residency, and you've been at the role for a little bit. When you look back, is there anything that's sort of, you were very prepared, but is there anything that surprised you about working at an aquarium?
I think one of the things that surprised a few things about the role, not about an aquarium. So I think I didn't realize until I got into residency, and I remember like the car ride where I was talking to one of my mentors and realized that the finances of zoo medicine are extremely different than the finances of most other specialties, especially in the nonprofit sector. You will be making less than a general practitioner, small animal veterinarian coming out of school day one. And that is after all of this training and all of the boards. So that's just important to know, again, specific to what your goals are. So that was surprising initially to me. And then in terms of aquarium medicine, there is so much that is unknown. Veterinary medicine, and compared to human medicine, we already don't have the N of 30,000 cases to tell us exactly what to do. But if you do have that in small animal medicine compared to what we have in zoo medicine, sometimes you're like, oh, there are literally no more of these in the entirety of North America. I have no one to ask. All I can do is compare to maybe a similar species. And I have to have this complete different assay validated for the species before I can get the answer to this question. And then do I know what to do with the results? And so being aware that creating knowledge and reporting it back is a part of your duty in this role is something that might be surprising to some people. There's a whole lot we don't know. Every day, it's like, I don't know. Let's figure that out.
Yeah, I really like the way that you said that, of like, it's a responsibility to kind of pursue those questions and lean into the unknowns versus shying away from that. I'm definitely a very black and white thinker. And so it's like, I would prefer fewer unknowns. But I love that it's like, somebody has to take ownership of those and pursue those questions and try to get some answers, or at least shed some, aquarium pun not intended, shed some light on some of those questions to help the profession as a whole. And I'm glad that you touched on the finances of it as well, because there are variations in career paths and the earning potential and kind of the progression, as we talked about earlier. And so it is important to be asking those questions as well, as our student listeners are thinking about externships or even pre-vet students. Just to be prepared. It doesn't mean that that necessarily will cross an option off the list, but just to know that it's important to have a plan, kind of regardless of which path you're going to take in vet med. So I'm really glad that you're able to bring that up and that you were able to consider that with a mentor in your residency. That's great.
Yes, I would consider it before you start residency. But yeah,
never too late. Now we know, right? Yeah, now we know.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, we talked about the finances can be a challenge in this path. There's a lot of schooling involved, right? We've got that school, internship, rotating specialty internship, right? Rotating specialty, residency, went to an additional zoo, and then back to Shedd. So do you ever have those moments that you come back to that you're like, this is all worth it? Or like those cases that like really stand out to you? Like what like keeps you going and makes you excited about this profession and this particular role that you're in?
Yeah, I would say that it's worth it. It was a very long road, but every single day there's a moment of awe. Certain things just don't get old. Like you think, like a golden retriever puppy, I feel like may not get old. I don't have the privilege of getting to see them all the time, but I assume they probably don't get old. Sea otters don't get old. Like they are very cute to a whole new level. And I think, so we do a lot of routine wellness exams on a lot of our animals, and monthly the belugas get, and dolphins get routine ultrasound, and that's for us and that's for them as well. And it's in the mornings, it's around 9 a.m. And the entire background of the habitat for the belugas is a gigantic window facing Lake Michigan. And so there's a ton of sun that pours in, and you're sitting there and you're scanning whales, which is like already amazing. And then all of the other whales are around being a little bit silly or ridiculous and making noises. And then like when they blow out of their blowhole, they take a breath and they exhale. There's a little bit of like water and the sun pours through and it creates an actual rainbow. And so you're in front of whales working with them as they're breathing rainbows. And that's, I mean, just amazing every time.
That is truly amazing. I have run along the lakefront and run by Shedd Aquarium. And so now I'm going to think about that completely differently now. And I'm going to try to do that on Tuesday morning.
Yes. Yep.
And that wave.
Yeah, please do.
Really funny. But so that's an incredible visual that you just painted. And now I would like to go back to school and be a part of this. But you did mention otters.
Yeah, I did.
And I'm not sure who's in charge of your social media, but they have really been doing a great job with the otter. Would you be willing to indulge me and just talk a little bit about the most recent otter edition that I know of,
Yes.
How it came to be and what you are able to share with us?
Yes. So Seldovia, as he is now named, was found in the vicinity of a very active adult male and a deceased female in remote Alaska. And so he was picked up and rescued by the Alaska Sea Life Center, and they do a phenomenal job taking in and rescuing a number of marine mammals in the area. And so the way this works is that there are only so many facilities in the world or in the country also who can handle baby sea otters, because baby sea otters take a ton of effort. It's 24/7 care. And again, to put the visual on, you're blow drying their hair and combing their hair for them and grooming all of the time. I mean, it is mind blowing. And so Shedd was the only one who had a spot open. And so we got a call one afternoon saying, hey, can you take this animal? Like, you are the only option for rescue for this animal. And so we did, and they did a wonderful job raising him. And then I got to go up to Alaska with an animal care professional as well, an animal trainer, who went up, got to know him, was there for his pre-shipment examinations, and flew him in a plane down to Shedd Aquarium. It was amazing. It's as amazing as it sounds. They're so fluffy, and they are handleable at that young age, and in fact need to be handled. So we put him in a crate, which lasted for like a second. And so the entire rest of the time we're cradling him, we're making sure he gets his little water time in the airplane, which is also an adventure, and like taking this tub of water and like trying to pour it into the toilet in the, in the airplane, playing with him, feeding, because that's all just constant. And then he arrived at Shedd Aquarium, and they did round the clock care with the animal care staff. And multiple other people around the aquarium also participated in kind of being that second person there for safety and participating in that husbandry care. And now he's thriving. He's almost 6 months old. He still screams a lot. He still looks a bit like a baby. Like, I was worried that he would grow up too quickly, but he's still very much, you can tell that he's a baby. He's very cute. I went down yesterday and he's being introduced to the other otters, and he had like this little ball that was like his little support toy he's carrying around. So absolutely a joy and a huge privilege to be able to work somewhere who can take animals in when needed. The story of sea otters in general and their rehabilitation and their conservation programs is a huge one as well.
That just really gave me an appreciation for mother otters, because it sounds like they do a lot.
They do a lot. They actually can almost starve themselves. There's a syndrome called end lactation syndrome, where they're just constantly in a state of reproduction. And by the end of like usually like a pup's weaning phase, they can have extraordinary physical consequences, as many mothers can probably relate to.
Yeah, wow, that is so interesting. And it's really cool that you really don't know what's going to happen next, is like what I'm hearing from you, right? There's this situation, this otter situation in Alaska, and you happen to be able to have the space. So, you might not have anticipated like being involved in that rehab process, but then it became a large part of your day to day after that. And so I think that's really awesome how you're able to not only like adapt to the adversity, but kind of welcome it and see each challenge as a new adventure. So I think that's the super, super cool aspect of your job.
Yes, it is constantly changing, which is very fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the fact that your patients are very cute, I'm sure does not hurt.
The level of cute of a baby sea otter, I do not think can be topped. I'm pretty confident in that.
I will not challenge you on that one. I will not challenge you on that one. So as we wrap up our time together, I have like a zillion more questions. So I'm really struggling with coming up with this last one. Sometimes we ask on the show, what advice would you give to somebody who's, thinking about vet school or in the early career? I'm actually curious because I know that we have a lot of vet students who are interested in kind of the exotic animal area. And so like, what advice would you have to those students who are kind of in the thick of it? Like you're either in vet school or in that internship or trying to decide if they want to do that specialty internship or residency next. Like, what do you do to those? What advice do you have for those kind of aspiring potential future aquarium vets?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in zoo medicine in general, just knowing that there are many different pathways to get there. There are many different pathways to take boards. There are many different pathways to getting jobs in this field. And so not to give up. And I know that a lot of times schools will try to be really what they feel is realistic with you, saying, why are you doing that? You're not going to find a job. And if you keep going, you absolutely will. Like if you persevere and you work really hard and you are also a good person to work with and a good colleague, you can do this. It's a lot. There is financial strain. There's a lot of moving strain. I moved every year for many years, started my entire life, again. And that's not easy. I don't live by family and friends. So there's certainly a lot of sacrifices that you need to know about. But if you want to do that, and you can, you can. It takes sacrifice, but you can totally do it.
I'm so glad that you shared that because I mean, I knew I wanted to do small animal, but certainly had that perception of it's way too competitive. It's not feasible except for like the elite of the elite. And so I am just so appreciative that you shared that sort of hopeful message that there is a place, and it might take some adjustments of where you live, or a little bit of time commitment, a little bit different time commitments and things like that. You just mentioned 24/7 call. I mean, with a team, but still a lot of considerations there. Not a lot of people you're gonna be able to ask for help, but in the end, it could be a Tuesday morning and you're watching rainbows, as your whales are breathing. So there's a lot of benefits in going in with open eyes, and that I just really appreciate that message of hope. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
And we know you're very busy. So thank you for the time, for joining us today. I truly enjoyed it. I cannot wait to get back over to Shedd now. And I'll just look at it with a whole new set of eyes, and just really appreciate your thoughts and being so open with your journey.
Well, thank you for having me. It's certainly a pleasure to be able to share. We very much value our position in the teaching community as well. So, if anybody has any questions, always feel free to reach out.
And we do want to thank each of you for joining us on this episode of My Veterinary Life Podcast. We love sharing these journeys with you. And remember, we want to hear from you. So you can email us at mvlpodcast@avma.org, or you can leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you listen to. With that, take care, and we'll see you next time.